What's up guys, I'm Jack, this is Driven by Data and we're back with another video. So we've had a few people asking to cover cheap, hot hatchbacks. So in this video I'm going to be covering 5 really cool, cheap, fast, fun, hot hatchbacks you can pick up for under £3,000 and they're all ULEZ compliant. Now I love hot hatchbacks, trust me. I grew up dreaming about hot hatchbacks, driving hot hatchbacks. I had quite a few hot hatchbacks and slow hatchbacks for that matter. I had some all-time greats including the Saxo VTS, a couple of 306s, a D-Turbo and an XSI Phase 1. So I absolutely love hatchbacks. And for me, the beauty of them is that they're cheap to run, they're light, they're revvy, they're fun to drive, and most importantly of all, they just put a smile on your face. But we live in a bit of a weird world of hot hatchbacks now, where like the Audi RS3 is quicker than Ferraris that I grew up idolising as a kid. I mean, I don't know how much of a 400 horsepower all-wheel drive hatchback you can use on the British roads and actually enjoy it to its limit. I don't think I'd have as much fun in a 400 horsepower RS3 as I would in a Saxo VTS right now on a British back road. Maybe that's just me, maybe I'm a bit biased, but anyway. So for the purposes of this video, we're just going to be thinking about fun, quick, little hatchbacks that you can pick up that aren't going to set your hair on fire, but are going to put a smile on your face. Quick interruption, while editing this, I noticed that 97% of you who are watching this have not subscribed yet. I just have one thing to ask. If you have ever watched one of my videos and enjoyed it, I would really appreciate if you'd hit that subscribe button down below. It really helps me to grow the channel and to keep making videos like this for you guys to enjoy. So I'd really appreciate if you could just hit that subscribe. Thank you very much. Back to the video. Now, one thing I want to mention before we get into this is that with cheap cars that are fast and aimed predominantly at young drivers, it's really important to look at the service record and look at the very least that the previous owner that you'd be buying it from has looked after the car well and maintained it properly. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get into it. What better place to start than with the UK's best-selling car of all time, the Ford Fiesta. Sadly, production of the Fiesta is ending this year in 2023, having been made for nearly 50 years. While there have been a number of fast Fiestas over the years, we're going to be focusing on the 5th generation Fiesta, or the 6th depending on who you ask, but it's the one that was the first fast Fiesta to wear the ST badge, and also known as the ST150. So the 5th generation Fiesta was introduced in 2002, but the ST didn't come until late 2004, so it was only available for 3 years. It was known as the ST150 because of its 2-litre Duratec engine producing 150 PS, also known as 148 horsepower. PS is the German equivalent of horsepower, and it's more or less the same. Anyway, the ST150 also featured styling changes over the regular Fiesta, such as different front and rear bumpers, bigger 17-inch wheels, and even racing stripes were an optional extra. Inside you could spec heated leather seats, but you got partial leather as standard, and you'll notice a couple of ST badges around on the boot and in the steering wheel. Despite the fact that a relatively large 2-litre engine in a small car sounds like a great combo, some did criticise the engine for lacking character and generally feeling a little bit dull. I think it depends where you're coming from. If you've been driving your entry-level 1.25 Mark V Fiesta around aspiring after the ST model, then it's no doubt going to feel quick. But if you're a more experienced driver looking for a weekend toy, then you might prefer some of the options we have coming up on this list a bit later, as at the end of the day this 2-litre engine is basically just taken out of a Mondeo. Lumpy idle is common on these, and it can be helped with a throttle body clean and a reset, but many drivers just put up with it. Listen out for funny noises from the gearbox or a difficult shift from second to third. Getting the gearbox oil changed as part of a service can be useful preventative maintenance. Also beware that the wheels can bend easily, so check the car is driving straight and true, and maybe it's something to consider if you live in an area with poor road conditions. Here is a one-owner example with 91,000 miles. It's for sale by a well-regarded dealer. It comes with 12 months MOT and even 3 months warranty, and they're asking $2,650. It is missing the wheel centre caps, which is a bit odd from a dealer, but people do nick these, and you can get replacements for around £25 per centre cap. You can pick them up even cheaper. Here's an example from a private seller with 3 previous owners and 124,000 miles. It does have a few bits that need sorting out, but it's only £1,500. Next up, we've got the Clio 172, which was introduced in 2000 and it was an instant hit. It was the hot version of the 2nd generation Clio, which had been released 2 years prior. This was the first time that Renault had branded their fast Clio as a Renaultsport. The first gen fast Clios were branded either Clio 16 valve or Clio Williams. Whilst the 172 was based on the regular 3-door Clio 2, it featured many styling and component changes over the standard car, meaning it was well deserved of its Renault Sport name. This included wider arches, a sportier front and rear bumper, side skirts, special 15-inch alloy wheels, and the power came from a 2-litre 16-valve inline-4 petrol paired with a 5-gear manual box. The engine produced 172 PS, hence the name. It translates to 170 actual horsepower. Inside you didn't get much, and people did commonly criticise the cabin, but you did get some nice half Alcantara, half leather sports seats. The regular Clio Clio 2 was facelifted in 2001, and the Clio 172 followed suit shortly after. This means the initial Phase 1 172, with the logo on the bonnet and the kind of busy front bumper with loads of holes, they're amongst the rarest ones. The facelift brought a cleaner front bumper design with slicker headlights and an uprated rear bumper. There were some minor interior tweaks, most notable being the automatic climate control rather than the manual AC from the Phase 1. Renaultsport released another update in 2004 with the 182, and this was made for 2 years with production ending in 2005. The updates were most obviously to the engine, with tweaks such as an updated oil breather setup and a new intake manifold resulting in more power. This time, you guessed it, it produced 182 PS, aka 180 horsepower. The spare wheel well was removed and a new dual exit exhaust was added. There was also new 8-spoke wheels. To add some complexity to understanding the models, both the Clio 172 Phase 2 and the 182 could be had in cup versions. These strip back the limited luxuries that were available on the standard Renault Sport versions in an effort to save weight. For example, you got basic halogen headlights, no AC or climate control, the seats were cloth not Alcantara, and the sound deadening was removed, and you also got stiffer suspension. The thing is though that the 182 Cup was actually quite a lot heavier than the 172 Cup, and as such, with the lack of luxuries and less weight saving, it wasn't a particularly desirable model. You could also get a Clio 182 Trophy, which is the creme de la creme of fast Clios. To be honest, for our 3K budget, we're going to be looking at a regular 172. Both the Cup models are going to be out of our price range and definitely the Trophy. Now these cars will likely have been driven hard, so a good service record is important, as I mentioned at the start. With regular servicing though, the 2-litre engine is known to be durable, but when viewing, check that the dipstick oil level matches the electronic indicator on startup, check for oil leaks from the rocker cover. Cam belts are a big job on these, and they carry a high replacement cost for labour at around £800. These do need replacing every 5 years or 72k miles, so if there isn't recent history of a replacement, it's best to factor that into the cost of purchase. Here is a 2002 Clio 172, which has covered only 82,000 miles. It's had a lot of maintenance done, such as new suspension and servicing. The seller mentions the headlining needs replacing, but this can be done DIY with a bit of patience. It is ULEZ compliant and it's up for just £2,300, which gives you a nice bit of budget left to get that cam belt done. Moving on, we have the R53 Mini Cooper S. The new Mini was introduced at the turn of the millennium, the first of the new Minis under the BMW-led project. The lineup in the UK was reasonably straightforward, with the Mini 1, the Mini Cooper, and the Mini Cooper S being the petrol options, and there was also a diesel option available. The Mini 1 had a 1.4 litre engine, the Cooper had a 1.6, and the Cooper S took that 1.6 and stuck an Eaton supercharger on it. The Cooper S is the one that we're interested in for its extra power and sporty appeal. It was introduced in 2002 and it was designated the R53, whereas the others were known as R50s. The lineup was facelifted in 2004 and a convertible version was added, which is also known as the R52. The Cooper S is immediately identifiable by the bonnet scoop, as well as the wonderful supercharger whine as soon as you squeeze the throttle. The 1.6 supercharged engine initially offered 163 horsepower, but it was up to 170 with the facelift. The Cooper S came paired with an improved 6-speed manual gearbox compared to the 5-speed fitted to the other models, and if it wasn't powerful enough for you, there was an option for an official John Cooper Works tuning package that would up the horsepower to around 200, offered some extra styling tweaks. Sadly, we will probably struggle to find a JCW within budget, but not to worry because the standard Cooper S is still an extremely fun car to drive and famed for its handling. My mum actually had 2 Mini Cooper S's when I was a kid, and I remember having a lot of fun in them. And if you did want to extract more power from your Cooper S, changing the supercharger pulley is pretty straightforward and it will up your power nicely. Being of BMW origin, it was pretty basic as standard, but it could be specced with some nice touches. Look out for models with the chili pack in particular, that got you loads of extras including half leather seats, xenon headlights and air conditioning. In any variation though, the interior feels certainly more premium than all the other cars on this list, but yes, it does feature quirky retro inspired design cues which might not be for everyone. For example, the speedo is a large dial in the centre console, but if you really don't like this, then you can find a model where either sat-nav or the chrono pack was specced, and these went in that middle space instead, and then the speedo dial moved above the wheel. Even if you don't like this, I'm yet to find someone who doesn't like the flick style toggle switch array for your windows and door lock in the centre console. You do need to watch out for rust on these, particularly the bottom of the doors and the boot lid. Oil leaks are fairly common on these. The rocker cover can leak, but it's an easy fix. However, if it's coming from the crank position sensor, it's a slightly longer job. Replacing the clutch is another tricky and kind of expensive job, so watch out for a high biting point on these because you'll need some change left over for a replacement. Note these cars originally came with run flat tyres, which cost more than regular tyres, and actually they don't handle as well on these as they do on normal tyres. So I would suggest putting some good premium normal tyres on and just making sure you have adequate breakdown cover. Here is a 2005 R53 in purple with only 73k miles. It's got 12 months MOT and even 2 keys. It's up for £2,850, but you can pick them up for even less than this. For example, this 2003 car in the best colour in my opinion, the green, with 100k miles. This one has the chili pack and service history, but it is a Part X, so no dealer warranty. But at 2k, you've got a lot of spare change in our budget to sort any issues that you might have. Next up, we're going back to basics with the Suzuki Swift Sport. The first generation Suzuki Swift came in 2005 and brought a new design language to Suzuki's small car offering with its wider customer appeal. The Swift Sport came a little later in 2006 with a high revving 1.6 litre petrol engine sporting high lift cams, forged pistons and strengthened valve springs. It was paired with a 5-speed manual gearbox. Due to its relatively smaller engine, the Swift Sport is not as powerful as the other cars on this list, putting out 125 PS or 123 horsepower. However, but it is known for being extremely fun to drive. The second generation did come in 2011 and upped the power to 136 by deploying some modifications to the same 1.6 naturally aspirated engine, such as a higher lift inlet cam. Whilst you might be put off by this lower power, it's worth remembering that some of the most praised hot hatches of all time featured high revving 1.6 NA engines in lightweight small cars. Think the 205 GTI or Peugeot 106 GTI or Saxo VTS, although compared to the other cars on this list, it's probably best thought of as a fun warm hatch rather than a hot hatch, but it was at least Suzuki's top of the line model for the Swift. Suzuki did tweak the handling over the regular Swift, giving it larger alloys and firmer suspension. The Sport also featured some styling tweaks, including sportier bumpers, a spoiler, twin exhausts, and you got some nice sports seats inside, but the rest of the interior was fairly basic. However, you did get on-wheel radio controls, which is a nice touch. The Swift was praised for its agility and fun, and if you're looking for a car that you can really drive and push closer to the limits without having to drive ridiculous speeds, then this could be the one for you, and it feels rewarding to do so. It's also likely to be the cheapest to insure of all the cars on this list, and its simplicity means that reliability and cheap servicing costs are on the menu. It has a timing chain rather than a belt, which should be good for the life of the car, assuming it's well serviced, but always worth listening out for chain rattle when viewing. I couldn't find many common complaints for these cars. Obviously, you need to look out for the usual good service record, the engine should rev freely, and so on. The gearbox does take a little time to warm up, so it might feel notchy when it's cold, but then it should feel smooth once it's warm. There are one or two mentions of juddering clutches, which could be rectified by a replacement, which will cost around £800, but they don't seem to be very common at all, and that issue should be obvious from a test drive. When it comes to driving these, 4 matching premium tyres will make a great difference to the handling of these cars, so if they haven't already got them fitted, it's best to budget for them. Here's the 2011 model. It's the last of the pre-facelift Gen 1s. It's only had 2 owners, covered 100,000 miles, and just had a full service. It's even got 2 keys, and it's up for just under 3k. Or here is a slightly older 09 Swift in black. It's had more owners at 4, but covered less miles at 75,000. It's up for 2,399. And for our final car today, we have what I think is a very underrated car from a classic British manufacturer. I'm talking about the MG ZR. The MG ZR was effectively a sporty version of the Rover 25 hatchback. The Rover 25 was made from 1999 to 2005, with the MG ZR coming in 2001, and it was produced until 2005 as well. Now, whilst you might think of the Rover 25 as Grandad's boring hatchback, the MG ZR certainly wasn't. There were numerous styling changes, different bumpers, side skirts, wheels, spoiler, and so on. Those not in the know may not even have realised that the ZR was related to the Rover 25. You could have the ZR in either 3-door or 5-door, and fun fact, you could even get it as a panel van, which was called the MG Express. Anyway, the ZR was facelifted in 2004, with the most notable change being the single headlight cluster each side rather than the dual setup of the original, as well as a new front bumper design featuring a 4-vent grille compared to the split grille on the original. I personally like the pre-facelift design more, but it's certainly down to personal preference. The ZR was available with a number of petrol engine options, including the entry-level ZR 105, which was a 1.4 litre with 102 horsepower, then there was the ZR 120 1.8 litre with 115 horsepower, and then it was the range-topping ZR 160 1.8 litre with variable valve control, producing 159 horsepower. There were also two 2-litre diesel engines, but we're focusing on the range-topping ZR 160 for this hot hatch video. The ZR 160 also came with the most advanced brake setup of all the variants, with 282mm vented front discs and 260mm rear discs and ABS as standard. The interior certainly does look dated, and actually it isn't as spacious inside as you would expect from a hatch of this size. Thankfully, rust isn't known to be a major problem on these. The main area to watch is where the front wings meet the front bumper. The primary concern with these Rover K-series engines is the head gasket. Check for any contamination on the dipstick, and be sure to take the car on a reasonably long test drive, and then check for bubbling in the header tank or any coolant loss. If there are any issues here, you can expect a bill of around £500 to rectify with an uprated head gasket, so bear that in mind. Cam-belt should be done every 60,000 miles or 4 years, and expect to pay around £500 again. Overall though, these are a pretty cool British hot hatch, which you don't see many of. Even the Minis are pretty popular, and actually they're BMWs anyway. Here is a lovely one-owner example with only 71,000 miles. It's been kept in a garage, and it's up for just 3k. Now we've seen all 5 cars in detail, let's dig into the data. And first up, I've added some new data points specifically for hot hatches: weight and power to weight ratio. As I mentioned at the start of the video, for me, hot hatches should be predominantly fun to drive. Whilst this is difficult to capture in data, often a lightweight car makes it fun and flickable on B roads, especially when combined with the right amount of power and good handling. That is the hot hatch recipe. So starting with the weight, we can see straight away that the Clio 172 is the lightest by some way at 1,035 kilos. This is in fact an entire average adult man lighter than the Suzuki Swift Sport, and nearly 200 kilos lighter than the heaviest car of the bunch, which is actually the Mini. The 172 also has the most power of the bunch, which means it delivers an impressive 164 horsepower per tonne. The second most powerful car is the Mini with 163 horsepower, but that equates to a significantly lower 134 horsepower per tonne. In fact, this is actually slightly less than the ZR 160, which comes in at 137 horsepower per tonne, since whilst it produces slightly less power than the Mini, it weighs 70 kilos less. The Swift Sport we see as the second lightest, but it's also the least powerful by some margin, equating to only 111 horsepower per tonne. Whilst the Swift Sport is the fastest Swift, it is more of a warm hatch than a hot hatch. Now looking at power and torque, we see that the Mini with its supercharger puts out the most torque of all the cars, including the 172, which in part delivers its rewarding driving experience. Where the ZR160 was close to the Mini in power, its torque pales in comparison with only 128 foot-pounds compared to 155 for the Mini. It's in fact the lowest of the bunch apart from the Swift, with the Fiesta coming in average. Now let's see how those figures come together in top speed and acceleration. Unsurprisingly, it's the 172 which has both the highest top speed at 138 mph and the quickest 0 to 60 at just 7 seconds. The Mini is very close with 138 mph and 7.2 seconds respectively. The MG ZR comes in the middle with 131 mph and 7.4, beating out the Fiesta ST's 129 and 7.9 seconds. The Swift Sport comes in at 124 and 8.6 seconds. And when you compare the Swift and the Fiesta side by side, the performance difference is actually not as big as you would expect given the difference in engine size and power. Now turning to running costs, and particularly important if you're younger looking for a hot hatch, is insurance group. This is where the Swift beats out all the others given its cheaper price tag when new and its slightly slower performance. It has a group of 23. The highest is actually the MG at 33, with the Clio and the Mini being similarly matched at 31 and 30 respectively. The Fiesta ST is the lowest of the more powerful cars at 26, so it might be one to consider if the insurance on the others is prohibitive. As for road tax, we know what to expect here given that these are all older petrol cars. They're going to sit around that £300 to £400 mark. The Swift is the cheapest at £290 and the Mini the most expensive at £395. The Clio is a bit cheaper at £365 and the Fiesta and MG both come in at £320. As always, these figures may vary depending on the specific year and model of the car that you're going to look at, so always double check to be sure. Finally, we have MPG. Now, it's best to take these NEDC figures with a pinch of salt, and particularly when it comes to spirited hot hatch driving, but according to NEDC combined figures, the Swift is the most efficient at 40 mpg, and the Mini and Clio are the least efficient at 33 and 34 mpg respectively. The MG and the Fiesta suggest an average combined mpg of 38 and 37. So there we go guys, 5 great ULEZ compliant hot hatchbacks you can pick up for £3,000 or less. Now considering all the data points and everything we've discussed, the two that stand out to me are the Clio 172 and the Mini Cooper S. For me, the Clio represents one of the last cars to come out of that golden era of hatchbacks with naturally aspirated engines, lightweight, and just fun. The Mini is undoubtedly a fun package though. That supercharger whine is musical and they're just fun to be in. Let me know in the comments below which one you would pick, or if you have another suggestion that wasn't on this list, please let me know down below. There are so many great picks that we couldn't cover them all in this video, and just some that come to mind are like the Seat Leon Cupra, the Honda Civic Type R, the Golf GTI of course, the Renault Megane 225, the Focus ST, the fast Vauxhalls like the Corsa and Astra VXR, some of the stuff I mentioned at the start of the video like the Saxo VTS, the 306s, the 106s, or even newer stuff like the Mazda 3 2.2 D Sport is actually a great buy. We've also got the Alfa Mito Cloverleaf, the Alfa Giulietta, the Citroen DS3. There's honestly so many cars in and around this price range that are really exciting. So if you'd like to see more videos covering some of those kind of cars and other ideas, maybe at a slightly higher price point, or maybe just prioritizing purely speed, so looking like what are the quickest cars that you can get for the money. We've already had a request for fast hatchbacks up to the 5k budget, so that one is already on the list. Now if you've made it this far, please be sure to subscribe here. A lot of effort goes into making these videos for you and I really appreciate the support. As I say, we're so close to that goal of 1,000 subscribers. There's another video here and I will catch you guys in the next one.